Welcome to Perspectives in Mobile, the news podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Join us discussing the world of telecommunications, technology, and mobile innovations. From Florence, Riccardo Amati.
Welcome to MEF Podcast Perspectives, your go-to source for insights into the ever-evolving landscape of mobile telecommunications and digital transformation. We are thrilled to have an interview with Joseph Cox, professional investigative journalist. He is the acclaimed author of Dark Wire. Welcome to Perspective, Joseph.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
In his book, Joseph Cox delves into the story of ANOM, a supposedly secure communication app secretly run by the FBI that trapped tens of thousands of criminals worldwide. The thriller is a fascinating intersection of technology, law enforcement, and cybercrime. Cox represents a world where no one can be sure who is listening in. And it's our world, folks. So we'll discuss the intricacies of the ANOM operation, the role of AI in cybersecurity, and the profound impact of digital advancements on journalism. First of all, what drew you to the ANOM operation, Joseph?
So I've been covering the encrypted phone industry since around 2016. At the time, the encryption debate was a lot about terrorism and Apple and iPhones and about how Apple was locking out the authorities from investigations and that sort of thing. I came across this industry that were taking ordinary phones, ripping out the GPS, the microphone, the camera, and adding encryption software. And I thought, this has to be where the big drug traffickers are. This has to be where the hitmen are. And it turned out it was right, and I started speaking to a lot of those companies and a lot of the people who use those phones. And then I actually found out about ANOM the same time as everybody else when the FBI announced they secretly ran the phone company in June 2021. And immediately I thought, well, this is a book now. I followed this industry for years and years and years. And now the FBI says it was a part of that industry. So then I went back and I started speaking to all of my sources and start building this story.
Can you provide an overview of how ANOM was set up and how it stayed undercover for a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a miracle that it did not leak, essentially. So this story starts in 2018 when the FBI shut down another encrypted phone company called Phantom Secure. In the wake of that, it became very obvious that this gold rush of selling encrypted phones to organized criminals was coming to an end, or maybe this was the start of the end at least. So then somebody in that industry who used the name AFGOO, AFGOO, approached the FBI saying that they were making the next generation of encrypted phones, and I'm going to give you this company. In exchange, maybe you won't prosecute me for some charges I may or may not face in the future. It was a deal. It was a transaction. And I can't stress how big of a deal that is. Usually you'd have an informant for one criminal organization, and they would already get a very good deal, potentially. Here, AFGOO was offering, at least potentially, a wiretap into hundreds of criminal organizations around the globe. That was if criminals would actually buy the ANOM phones, which wasn't the case at the start. So from 2018 over the next coming years, ANOM organically becomes more and more popular. Drug traffickers buy it, they tell their friends and their associates about it. The phones start in Australia before moving to Europe, South America, Southeast Asia. And by around 2020, especially when the FBI shuts down another encrypted phone company called Sky, you have ANOM is now a serious player in the space with thousands upon thousands of users all over the world, and the FBI is getting all of these messages, so much so that it actually becomes a little bit difficult for the FBI to handle, and it has to start giving out information to European other European law enforcement agencies so they can dig through the data as well.
How many people were into that at the FBI?
So initially, it was a handful, like 4 or 5, something like that. Then it brings in the organized crime squad, which is around more of a dozen. And then eventually, when they need more and more help, there's a rotating cast of 130 FBI agents who are going through the messages at any one time or another. Then you have the collaboration at Europol, which is something like 16 other countries, all with their own analysts going through the data as well. It's certainly the largest sting operation ever for law enforcement, because on the day they did all of these arrests, there was something between 9,000 and 10,000 police officers acting in tandem, in relay, which is obviously very crazy. I would also probably say, if it's not the biggest, it's obviously one of the biggest collaborations of law enforcement, having all of these agencies coming together.
International, you mean?
Exactly. An international collaboration, all these agencies coming together, and not just working together, but working face-to-face, where they're in Europol, and they can instantly trade intelligence and say, we're tracking this person, could you arrest him in this country? I'd never seen something quite like this.
And you know what? I mean, this is probably, just my impression, but what I think about digitalization and this, security problems, I really think that people that says we don't need multilateralism anymore, we need multipolarism, I think they are so wrong, because in these things you need this kind of international cooperation. If not, even for rules, or am I wrong? You are the expert, but what I see is that without a multilateral partnership, it's very, very difficult to tackle this kind of crimes, for example.
Well, exactly. I mean, the nature of organized crime today is that it's globalized, right? You do not have a single criminal entity in, say, Australia or wherever acting in a silo. That's just not how it works now. They will have collaborators in Turkey, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, wherever it is. So if the criminals are doing, multilateral collaboration...
Yeah, they do that.
Exactly. So the police need to respond to that, and they're doing it by collaborating on this massive scale.
Can you cite some, let's see, some of the most surprising revelations you stumbled upon while covering this fantastic story?
A large part of it has to be the truly insane smuggling techniques that some of these drug dealers did. They would hide drugs inside cans of energy drink using a corrupt worker at the facility. They would turn sleepy cottages into amphetamine growing labs or production labs. They would hide cocaine in slabs of concrete. They would put cocaine into liquid fertilizer and then basically use chemical magic to turn it back into cocaine base or powder at the other side. Any single harebrained scheme that you can think of and go, no, there's no way they would do that. I guarantee you the drug traffickers have already tried it, already thought of it, because the trade-off for them is so good. They just need to get 1 or 2 shipments through and they will absolutely make their money back. Beyond that, it is the amount of public corruption that was inside ANOM and some of these other encrypted phone companies as well. I mean, the prosecutors I spoke to, especially on the US side, they were blown away by the number of corrupt cops, corrupt port workers, corrupt people inside airports as well. And you don't normally hear about those people in criminal investigations, at least typically. They're sort of the ones who get away, at least generally speaking. They didn't hear. They're all on these encrypted phones, and the police and the FBI and the authorities could see it all.
Did the FBI overstep ethical or legal boundaries? Do they go too far, in your opinion?
So the legal question is an interesting one, because it would have been illegal to monitor the communications of phones inside the United States. The FBI knew this. The prosecutors knew this. That's why they set up a really complicated legal and technical structure to have the messages first routed via Lithuania, who then provided an MLAT transfer back to the FBI. All very complicated. But all you need to know from that is the FBI believes it was legal because they set up this apparatus to do that. Now, ethically, I think that's the discussion we need to have now. They arrested hundreds of people. They mitigated around 150 threats to life, but it wasn't a completely clean operation. As I reveal in the book, at least one person died. They were assassinated because the murder was planned on ANOM. And then you also just have the much broader question of, do we want the FBI or other agencies to compromise entire phone platforms? Would we rather have something like they do targeted hacking against one specific user with a specific warrant and get certain messages? Or are we okay with them taking over platforms or running entire platforms? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not in a position to answer that as an investigative journalist, but I really hope that people now read the book and we start to figure out, do we want authorities to do this? Because they kind of just went ahead and did it. There was no debate. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. They didn't debate the things in the talk show. And right, unintended consequences. You said one people died, and what else?
It got to the point where the FBI started to lose control. The reason for that is that the FBI had to give the sellers of the ANOM phones, who were criminals — the FBI wasn't selling the phones themselves, it was spreading organically — the FBI had to give them some autonomy and some power so ANOM looked like any other encrypted phone company. It has to remain undercover, it has to remain a secret. And that's good for that reason, but there's a trade-off in that some of these sellers started to get more and more powerful. They found a way to make the phones themselves, so the FBI couldn't control the supply chain. They found a way to spread across the world much more quickly. So by the end, it was some of these top-tier drug traffickers like Hakan Ayik, who's Australia's most wanted man, and then Maximilian Rifkin, who's a Serbian-born Swedish gangster. They were the ones calling the shots on where ANOM was being sold and how it was being distributed. And one of the agents in the case, Nicholas Chevron, who obviously did a fantastic job leading the operation, in part with another agent called Stephanie Stevens. But I'm told that Nicholas would say over and over every time ANOM would get more users, this is getting too big, it's going to fall apart, we can't run this any longer. And yet they kept going and kept going and kept going. And the European authorities wanted the FBI to basically go forever, but they had to stop somewhere. And when I bring that up for unintended consequences, because it brings up the question of, well, did they go too far? Or did they actually not go far enough? But it absolutely started to get out of control. I'm comfortable saying that.
Sure, understandable. I mean, it's a bit of a problem with all undercover operation. At some stage, they have to stop, and we have to, to take what you had at the moment. Artificial intelligence, unavoidable question for an investigative journalist who devoted years to research a book like Dark Wire. How is AI currently being used in cybersecurity? I mean, we know that gangsters are using it in many ways, gangsters or just fraudsters, interpreting other people, etc. But from the defense point of view, how it could be useful.
So I went to a conference recently, and somebody from Google there was speaking, and they were talking about how there actually could be so many more benefits for the defenders rather than the attackers when using AI. Now, to be clear, they weren't suggesting that we were there right now, and I don't think that's the case either. But we hear all of these reports about how hackers are going to use ChatGPT for making phishing emails or whatever, and that may be the case, but they believe that the defenders are going to have a much better hand when it comes to AI. They didn't get into specifics, but I imagine that could be stuff like predicting what part of the infrastructure is going to be targeted, maybe surfacing points of compromise that you may not have paid attention to. I think there is a lot of room there, and I would generally agree that the defenders probably will get more out of it, because when it comes to the attackers, yes, making some phishing emails, okay, sure, they can do that manually as well. You can even automate it. You don't need AI.
You don't really need much intelligence.
Yes,
artificial or stupid one.
Exactly. All you need to do is copy and paste. Basically, I know I'm generalizing, but I do agree with this Google, the senior Google person, that the defenders are probably going to have it better. We're just not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm. And about artificial intelligence and investigations, let's talk about journalism, investigative journalism. How has it impacted investigative journalism, on your opinion, at the moment?
So there's two main ways. The first is the business side, and the second is then the actual use case. So I am a co-founder of 404 Media. We are a very small tech investigations outlet. We quit our jobs at Motherboard, which was the technology section of Vice, because that was a very big corporate company with lots of financial problems. We go out on our own, and we're primarily subscriber driven. You pay us money every month, you get access to all of our articles, and then we go produce the journalism. Very, very basic model. You give us money, we give you journalism. That being said, we had to recently put up what we call a free wall, which is where you have to sign up with an email address to read even our free articles. And that is because we found artificial intelligence was being used to scrape our website en masse, and that of other tech investigations websites, regurgitate the content, and then just publish it elsewhere on the internet. So we had to safeguard our labor, our investigations, our intellectual property. So there's definitely a business impact when it comes to AI on investigative journalism.
Sure.
Then on the using side, the way we've experimented with it, and we're continuing to do it, is that we think it could be useful for freedom of information requests, which is where you send a request to a government agency. Obviously, it varies from agency to state to local to country, wherever it may be. But generally, you send a request, you ask for certain documents that you believe you're legally entitled to, and then hopefully you get them back. Now, governments don't always give you the documents, and sometimes they fail. And that is,
I know the feeling.
yes, and that's where ChatGPT can come in, because we're not lawyers, right? We're journalists, but we could use ChatGPT to quickly write an appeal letter to then send to the government agency. Now, again, we could do that manually. I've done it manually for a very long
Takes
time.
a lot of time and lots of
time.
research.
Exactly. So we can use ChatGPT too, and I think we've done it once or twice, and we're definitely going to experiment with it more. But there's that, and then also just more broadly, we get a lot of big data leaks, a lot of big data dumps. We could use AI potentially to summarize a lot of that content. Now, of course, we wouldn't do that in the cloud because a lot of this stuff is very, very sensitive. We wouldn't just dump it into ChatGPT. We would run probably a local LLM, and then we would process it like that. There is a lot of opportunity there for data digging and getting information out of data dumps. That's where I would put my emphasis. I would put less on the using it for writing, even though it could be beneficial. That's just not my interest in the moment. My interest is let's use it to surface interesting data and that sort of thing.
It's a very practical kind of use. Ethically, what are the limits that an investigative journalist should take in account in dealing, with sophisticated technology and AI in particular?
AI specifically, of course, has a trust problem. It has an accuracy problem. It obviously depending what you're doing, but I think as journalists you have to be exceptionally careful whenever you are using any sort of technological tool, and especially AI. Let's say you put something into ChatGPT, it returns with a result. You absolutely cannot take that as gospel. And I think we've all learned that. When ChatGPT first came out, I think people were trusting it a bit blindly, potentially, and now I think we've all collectively realized, oh no, we need to then go and fact check this material as well. This is a first draft or whatever it may be. You absolutely have to do that as well. And then more broadly on technological tools, I do a lot of stuff where I analyze the internet traffic sent by apps, because you can find lots of interesting stories like that. Oh, this medical app is transferring data to Facebook or something like that. I would say that if you're going to do something like that, ethically, of course, learn to do it yourself, but try to get somebody else to check it as well, because as we use more and more technological tools in our journalism, we're going to be introducing skill sets and problems that we're just not used to. We're used to going out and knocking on people's doors and asking them questions, you know. It's a very, very different world of journalism now, and it's exciting, but we have to be careful and cautious as well.
And about OSINT, AI is... I mean, I was talking with a colleague saying now everything is faster. People that are following, for example, I don't know, the war in Gaza or the war in Ukraine, getting maps and all these signals they have from flights, from whatever. And now they say everything is much faster. I think this is one of the things that really helps journalism. Apart from you have to have your investigation and your sources. Without that, and it's not something that AI can give you probably. But in terms of efficiency of time spent, okay, that's, again, I'm saying my point of view. I just wanted to ask your story.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have a long history of doing OSINT. I trained with Bellingcat, the OSINT sort of collective.
Were you with Bellingcat?
No, I wasn't with them. Let me clarify. I paid for them to train me, so it's not the same. They sometimes do these trainings, and I highly recommend.
They are brilliant,
exactly.
In my opinion.
I highly recommend that anybody does them. So that was a lot of manual OSINT, obviously, and you're learning the skills. And what I've seen now is that I'm yet to test them, but I saw a tool the other day that would use machine learning to take an image from Google Street View, and then it could apparently calculate where in the world that was, which is something that OSINT, analysts do every single day. Now, if you could speed it up where you don't have to be a genius like Bellingcat or anybody in that organization, and you can just put it in, and then you get, even if it's not the fully correct answer, it's like, oh, okay, at least I know it's in this country. At least I know it's in, like, the south of Ukraine or whatever. That could be amazing, and I'm absolutely going to keep exploring tools like that. But with OSINT, just the ethical thing I would say is that as more and more people get into the space, especially on Twitter or X, where a lot of people share OSINT material, sometimes the quality of the work has gone down. I would say, where people just post anything,
Just propaganda many times.
Yes.
What do you hope readers take away from Dark Wire, from your book?
I hope that people realize that we are in a brave new world of policing. We are in the world now where police agencies and authorities will compromise entire networks, as I said, but they will also actually go and use AI. There is an AI aspect to the ANOM story, and that of EncroChat and Sky, these two other encrypted phone companies, where they used AI to surface messages that the AI thought would be important to the investigators. That could be an amazing capability, similar to what I said about using AI to surface data for journalists, but slow down. I feel like we should probably talk about this before it's just rolled out and it's being used en masse against people, criminal or otherwise. I just absolutely hope that people read the book, they realize, oh, this is what happens now when the authorities do get a tech backdoor into an encrypted phone product or any tech consumer product. What do we want to do about this now? Because for years, we've had to speculate about what happens if the FBI got a backdoor. Well, it happened, and it's in the book. Now let's talk about it. Yeah,
it's terrible. And classical last question: next projects? Just journalism, or do you have some idea about a new book? Or in general, what kind of stories are you following? I mean, I'm not asking exactly, but in general, what field?
Not a new book. I'm way too tired for that. It's way too much work. But yes, right now, it's focused entirely on 404 Media, producing investigations, getting them out there, increasing our subscriber base, and just very generally, I'm really interested in how criminals are using AI or machine learning or manual techniques as well to bypass KYC checks, know your customer checks on banks, on cryptocurrency exchanges, all of that sort of thing. I've covered how criminals are able to generate realistic looking photos of a fake ID in seconds or minutes by just entering it into a certain website. You pay a bit of money and you have a photo of your fake ID. That threatens to radically change the idea of identity on the internet. Like, who is who can you really believe? Can the websites or the crypto exchanges or the banks believe who is using their services? So I'm really interested in that broadly. I'm absolutely going to be doing more stories in KYC and that sort of world of fraud.
You didn't tell us the name of your company.
404 Media. So that's the numbers, 404 Media. And the website is 404media.co. We could not afford a .com at the time. far too expensive. But it's grassroots journalism, investigative journalism from people who've been doing this for a very, very long time. And we're going to keep doing it for a very, very long time. Things are going well.
Joseph, good luck with your work. Joseph Cox, the author of Dark Wire, a thriller that represents a world where no one can be sure who is listening in. Joseph, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for this episode of Perspective, the MEF podcast where experts and industry leaders talk about what they think, see and expect in the world of technology, telecommunications and innovative mobile services. Stay tuned. From Riccardo Amati, goodbye and good luck with your work.
Thanks for listening to Perspectives in Mobile. Join us next as we explore telecoms, technology, and mobile innovations. Stay tuned, stay connected, and let's unlock the mobile potential together.